Welcome to the Fed Nexus Law Government Contracts Industry Report for the week of September 22nd. I'm Jennifer Albell. Joining us in studio this afternoon is Mitchell Bashur, an associate attorney with Fed Nexus Law, who will be talking to us about his blog discussing the recent GAO report on limitations on subcontracting. Before we get started with our interview, though, let's talk about the big news in federal contracts this week coming out of the Department of Defense. On September 19th, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, Frank Kendall, released the draft version of Better Buying Power 3.0. While the latest iteration of Better Buying Power is still grounded in many of the fundamentals of its predecessors, we do see a strong new emphasis on initiatives that encourage innovation and promote technical excellence in version 3.0. In his white paper accompanying the draft for the new Better Buying Power program, Undersecretary Kendall remarks, "Underpinning BBP 3.0 is the growing concern that the United States' technological superiority over potential adversaries is being threatened today in a way that we have not seen for decades." As a result, we're seeing continued emphasis on incentivizing innovation within the government contracting workforce, as well as in partnership with industry. You can read the draft of Better Buying Power 3.0 and comment by going to bbp.dau.mil. Next, we're moving on to the interview segment of our broadcast. With us in studio is Mitchell Bashur, an associate with Fed Nexus Law. He's here to talk to us about his recent blog entitled, "Has GAO Had Its Roger Goodell Moment?" So, Mitchell, I'm sure our listeners are very curious to know what exactly the GAO has to do with Roger Goodell.
Yes, certainly, Jennifer. So by now, sports fan or not, I'm sure most people in this country have heard about the Ray Rice situation and how the commissioner of the NFL handled it and minimalized domestic violence by giving Ray Rice a 2-game suspension. After the uproar, the NFL backtracked and has changed its policies. Well, we can only hope that the GAO will do the same thing on this report.
So the limitations on subcontracting rules are something that confuse a lot of contractors, especially in light of some of the significant changes that happened in the National Defense Authorization Act of 13. Can you explain a little bit about how the rules changed with the NDAA?
Definitely. Well, let me start with, we get a lot of clients asking about these rules because it's difficult how the old rules were written to figure out how in the world are you supposed to comply with this? What's your system to keep track of your cost? Well, the NDAA of 2013, for once Congress did something right and made it slightly easier. So, for example, for services, you used to have to track personnel cost, and 50% of personnel cost had to be done by the 8A, the WASB, the organization that was approved by SBA. What's a personnel? It's a very difficult, and then how do you factor in cost? It's very difficult for contractors to keep track of. Now, the NDA of 2013 made it 50% of the cost paid to the contractor. That's much easier to do, it's much easier to allocate across. So something good came from Congress with the NDA.
So if the NDAA made things a little bit clearer in a very murky scenario, how is this GAO report causing more confusion with something that had potentially been somewhat clarified?
Well, the confusion comes because the NDAA, it changed the Small Business Act. The Small Business Act is the statute that creates a small business administration and is a source of all of the 8A, WASB, and other disadvantaged organizations. But it did not change the FAR, and it did not change the 13 CFR, which are the SBA regulations. So for those who are used to just looking at the FAR and the SBA regulations, it looks like as if nothing had changed. Well, apparently GAO thinks nothing has changed and is telling contracting officers that's the case, although that is far from the truth.
So what should contractors do in light of this contradictory guidance? How do they protect their interests?
Well, first, if you have an existing contract, it's whatever is written in the contract, so there will not be a change for you. But if you're bidding on a solicitation or you're an apparent awardee, you need to have a discussion with your contracting officer to see how these are being calculated, how it's determined whether you are complying with the limitation on subcontracting. And because another new innovation from the NDAA is that under the NDAA, similarly situated entities do not count against you for limitation on subcontracting, which is a huge change. And so you want that in there. You want to benefit from these new provisions, and you need to have the discussion with your contracting officer as to these expectations.
Okay. To read Mitchell's blog, check out FedNexus Law Insight at fednexuslaw.com and follow us on Twitter at FedNexusLaw. This is Jennifer Aubel. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you next week.